Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today. It is great to have you with us on this Tuesday. Dave Revson, Dave Wanstead. I always look at these first couple of weeks as information gathering. You learn a little bit in week one. You learn a little more in week two. I feel like we have gathered quite a bit. Now it's time to try to start processing.
I agree. And, obviously everybody wants to talk about the ranked teams, which we will. But you know what I was excited about is the bounce back teams. The Indianas and the Purdues of the world, Northwestern, the teams that bounce back, that's a great shot in the arm going forward for those coaches and players and the fans. Everybody's back in the game.
Going to dive deeper into those teams a little bit later in the show. But as you mentioned, we are going to lead at the very top of the conference. Our big story, the power at the top. 3 of the top 7 teams in the nation in the latest AP poll are in the Big Ten. Number 2, Michigan. Number 6, Ohio State. 7th-ranked Penn State. To give you a little perspective on that, no other conference has more than one top 7 team. Those 3 have been in the top 7 in all 3 polls this season. You'll be able to see the highest ranked of those teams on the Big Ten Network on Saturday as Michigan squares off with Bowling Green in prime time. 2 early games. We've got Wisconsin and Indiana both in action. Iowa and Rutgers both take the field in our mid-afternoon window. It's all Saturday, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Go to btn.com/gamefinder for channel locations in your area. As I kind of hinted at off the top, I'm interested to get your take in each one of those teams. Let's start with Michigan. Yeah. They hold steady at number 2. They've been very impressive. What have you seen from the Wolverines 2 weeks in?
Well, J.J. McCarthy, it's really ridiculous. The guy, 85% completion rate? How do you do that? I had quarterbacks in the NFL that we couldn't do that against air, with no defense. The guy's off to a great start. They're doing a great job of coaching them. But the area, you always want to improve week 1 to week 2. And we talked last week, the one area that I was a little bit concerned about was the offensive line and the running game, and Blake Corum that first week, he was fantastic. He's a leader, captain of that team. He says, there'll be games when if we have to throw it, we'll throw it, and when we run it, we run it. But I could tell in his voice that he was a little disappointed in how they ran the ball in the first week. Well, they bounced back big this week. He puts up his normal numbers, over 5 yards a carry. So that tells me that Jim Harbaugh and the rest of the coaches on offense, they said, okay, this is an area, guys, that we're going to focus on and we're going to practice and we're getting back to basics. And you like seeing that. So they balanced out that run-pass thing. And then defensively, 10 tackles for losses, no points from the third quarter. Defense is right where they need to be. You just got to keep that level up. And there's always things that you can correct week to week. But that offensive line and that running game, to me, that's a big deal at this point in the season.
Averaging the most yards per play of any team in the Big Ten. And then you mentioned JJ, and those numbers are astounding. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, first 2 games of the season, this is the 4th highest completion percentage through 2 games in FBS history. So, you talk about how do you do this? Very few have been able to do it at this rate this early in the season. We'll see whether or not he can keep it up against Bowling Green. What have you learned about Ohio State through 2 weeks?
Well, last week I gave it the old relax thing. Everybody's panicking about how many points you scored. Ryan Day, to me, I watched his press conference afterwards. He looked a little bit frustrated. You'd like to play Youngstown State, and the perception is that you should win 55 to something. But Marvin Harrison Jr. got back in track. He had a big day, 7 catches. So they did put up numbers throwing the ball. They got an opportunity to play both quarterbacks. Devin Brown got in there, for a sizable amount of the time and got some good work. So that's going to help your team down the road. I'm not as. I think they're where they need to be. They got to keep emphasizing that running game, because the one thing that might happen when they get up against the tougher competition is if the quarterback it's the first time starting. If he's still feeling his way a little bit, how do you take pressure off him? Got to be able to run that football, right? And defensively, they're off to a great start. They really are. I think that they've got the athletes. We talked about that, Rever. But I think I see consistency this year from the get-go, and I like that on defense. They did score 4 out of their first 5 drives, so people get panicky, but
well, Ryan in fairness, Ryan in the post-game interview is saying, "Hey, we weren't as efficient as I want to be." So I think to a certain extent, people are just following the lead of the head coach.
And I would say the same thing too. I mean, when someone said, that Ohio State's playing Youngstown State, what do you think the score was? There's nobody that would guess less than 50, right?
Yeah.
So I think they're caught up in that a little bit. But hey, this gives Ryan an opportunity to grind these, keep pushing and keep pressing and keep perfecting your craft, guys. We got to get better here. We can be a lot better here. So he'll approach it the right way. And as long as the players respond, you're going to get better.
It's fair to say he generally knows what buttons to push. So he's done a pretty good job here. It is interesting. Scored 40 or more points in 10 of their 13 games last year, have yet to do it this year. We'll see whether or not that changes this week against Western Kentucky. Penn State, obviously, the other team in the top 7. I mentioned we're going to have James Franklin coming up a bit in the show, so we'll talk more about the Nittany Lions when he joins us. What about Iowa? Back in the rankings this week. They continue to win with complimentary football.
They do. And there's the concern I have, and I'm hearing, because I picked Iowa to win the West. And I was basing that on Cade McNamara, the quarterback from Michigan. It's there now, that he's going to have an impact. He's been off to a little bit of a average start, in my opinion. He's a lot better player. We've seen him play at a higher level than what he's playing right now. For them to be in the conversation, for the championship at the end, for the West, he's got to take his play up. His numbers completing a little bit over 50%. It's been good enough to win, and maybe coming off the injury has something to do with it, Rever. I don't know, but that's the one area that right now, hey, what do we got to do to make this better? The one thing that they did jump at, I was a little concerned about that offensive line. We talked in week 1.
Yeah.
Remember the tackles for losses and the lack of rushing. They bounced back. They did a nice job. They ran the ball. It looks like it's going to be Patterson and Johnson, a combination of those two guys. They put up good rushing numbers. So they've got the running game going. They're getting some confidence there. And defensively, hey, we can't lose sight. They graduated 2 number 1 picks last year, right? Off that defense. And I think they filled in great. Phil Parker, nobody does a better job of developing players. They're playing at a high level again on defense. They're scoring on defense, right? Which they did last year. They got a touchdown last weekend. So defensively, they're going to be fine. I think the running game, I feel better today than I did even last year at any point. I didn't think they really ran the ball well. And the quarterback, I've got faith. I'm believing that they will get better. The last point, and I got to say this, the elephant in the room, this Brian Ferentz thing on how many points you're scoring, I don't think that is fair to their football team. I don't like it. After every game, the conversation is not just about how well you played, and we're all guilty. Did they score enough points? Are they going to win enough games? Get rid of that. They beat Iowa State on the road. That's a good win for them. I hope they get credit for that.
Fair enough. And certainly we have discussed it. Look, it's out there, and I think kind of your natural inclination is to talk about it and see where they stand relative to the threshold that's been set. But I understand your point. Now, I do think in some ways, and I think it was this way from the outset, that it was kind of set up almost as a distraction, right? It was going to be almost by definition a distraction. And right, the goal is, do you win games? Obviously, the offense wasn't where they wanted it to be these last couple of years. That was the way that they tried to approach it. We'll see as the season goes on.
They averaged 7 points a game last year, their first 2 games. So there's a lot of
right. No, they're way better. They're way better.
The defensive scores count.
Yeah.
The defensive scores count in the big picture.
They do.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. No, the defensive scores count. They are the only team in the country that's 2-0 after being outgained in both games. But again, this is kind of how they win. What about Wisconsin? Went on the road. They were in the rankings. This time last week, they are no longer in the rankings after falling at Washington State. We talked about this yesterday with Howard and Nicole. This is a tough game. Washington State is a really good team. They'll probably be in the rankings for much of this year, although there's so many good teams in the Pac-12, they may end up cannibalizing themselves. That being said, Wisconsin did not look great in this one, kind of shot themselves in the foot offensively.
Yep. Fell behind.
What did you take from the performance?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've coached games out there when I was at USC, Spokane out in Washington. It's a long way to go. You kind of get trapped a little bit. What I took away from this game, I was not disappointed in the defense. I think that quarterback-wise, Moriarty, he's fine. He's going to be fine. What happened? 3 yards a carry. They got out-possessioned. When was the last time that the other team had the ball out-possessioned, Wisconsin team? So they got out-possession just by a minute or two, but still didn't hold on. And he averaged 3 yards of rushing, 3 turnovers, 1 for a touchdown. That's your ball game. Give me the stat sheet. I'll look at it right now and say the two teams right here, oh, this team turned it over 3 times and one of them to score. They lost. You know what I mean? So when you turn the football over and give up scores like that, it's tough to beat anybody, then alone a Pac-12 team on the road.
This has been challenging early for Tanner Mordecai. We saw him throw a couple of interceptions.
I like
in the
him.
First game.
Yep.
Had some turnover issues in this one. They've turned it over 5 times now through 2 games. The second most of any team in the Big Ten. It is time for our big stat. Purdue endured a 5-hour and 27-minute weather delay Saturday in Blacksburg. To put that in perspective, here are a few things one could have done to fill that time. You could listen to the best-selling album of all time, Michael Jackson's Thriller, more than 7 times. A Boiler fan in Dayton, Ohio could have gotten in the car and driven to Blacksburg when the game was delayed and could have comfortably been there for the resumption. Could have relived the Boilers' Big Ten basketball tourney title win twice and made it to halftime of a third watching, or could have run through more than 4 Purdue Grand Prix go-kart races. I do want to say Thriller 7 times seems excessive, but that being said, it was impressive when you consider you're the road team, you don't have the same amenities the home team does, you sit through that and you figure out a way to win.
Yeah, that's a record. I mean, I've been through some of those myself, but nothing compared to that. And Virginia Tech playing down there, like you said, it is a tough deal. And I got to give Ryan Walters, he must have listened to our show last week, Rever, because the point that I made, I gave the coach Chuck Knoll story that he told me when I got my head coaching job. Why did you get hired? Defense. You better play defense. Put your focus there, and that's what they did, in my opinion. I mean, that's the biggest change from week 1 to week 2. They came out, and their defense really set the tempo. I mean, you know, holding the opponent to the 2 for 12 on third down, with, you know, giving up no points in the second half, 3 sacks, 9 tackles for loss. And what helps that is a good running game. And they committed to the running game. I tell you, I got to give Graham Harrell, the offensive coordinator, you know, he's got that air raid mentality and background, Texas Tech, and they ran the football. I mean, they held the football for 38 minutes, so you win the possession time. That keeps your defense rested. And then your quarterback, who is your guy, I know you're trying to get him to become offensive player of the year, but you know, Hudson Card, it was 23 of 34, so he's off and running. That's a good start.
I'm not advocating for Hudson Card, but he's awfully good. He was fabulous the day we were there at practice. I'm with you though, in wet conditions, they didn't turn it over. They haven't turned it over yet in 2 games. And you talk about changing your offense and defense, as you said, really good. They'll be tested this week. They've got Syracuse coming up, a team that's 3rd in the nation in total offense, nearly 600 yards per game. That's a nice way to get us into our big interview. A little coach speak. Coach Wanstead with me to talk to Penn State head coach James Franklin. James, let's start with the performance of your team to this point. How would you assess it relative to your expectations entering the season?
Well, first of all, I think you're just trying to get Wanstead in a good mood by showing touchdowns by running backs, which I know he loves, and against West Virginia, trying to get Wanstead in a good mood. But yeah, I think, you know, we've done a good job so far. You know, obviously West Virginia here at home to start the season, and then last week with Delaware. For me, I just want us to get better each week, and I think we've done that, not just in terms of the feel of the game and how it visually looked, but also from a metric standpoint. We're getting better in terms of our missed assignments have gone down, our missed tackles have gone down. And if we do that, each week as the season goes on, then I think we'll like where we're at the end.
Coach, I do want to ask you about this week's opponent, Illinois. Been a little up and down to start the season, but still a team that I think a lot of people believe can compete for the Big Ten West, has a chance to get to Indy. You head there to take them on. They, of course, beat you the last time you played. Give us a sense of what you've seen as you've broken down Illinois here this week.
Yeah, I got a lot of respect for Illinois and Coach Bielema. They've done a great job. He's done a great job wherever he's been. Obviously, a lot of excitement about them coming into the season. Feel like it's a team, especially based on their defensive personnel, that they can compete for a Big Ten championship. So we know it's going to be a tremendous challenge, and we know it's going to be a tremendous opportunity on the road as well. We have opened the season a lot on the road in the Big Ten. We do it again this year. And it's going to be a really good opportunity. I think it's an orange out, so it'll be a great atmosphere there, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, Coach, you knew we couldn't put a play on there with an empty set and no backs in the backfield, okay? So we at least had to get a running back on the film. I'm looking at the recruiting, and it's phenomenal. And I know you go into Pittsburgh and get guys from Mont Lebanon, and you got guys from Penn Hills and Central Catholic. But I was looking at your roster, and you got players on your team from, I added up 16 different states plus Canada. I mean, this is remarkable. Just real quick, number one, how do you cover that ground? How do you do that? And the second point of my question is, you got these young players, and I mean this sincerely, I don't think anybody in the country has done a better job than you have and your staff of developing these young players when you get them. And they're playing young and they're making plays and winning for you. What's the process, one, of the recruiting? You're a national recruiting school, obviously. And then is there any secret to how you or what you're doing with your staff to develop these kids?
So I guess the first thing, Coach, is, we want to make sure that we keep all the best players in the state of Pennsylvania home, and we take tremendous pride in that and work very hard at that. I just think it has to start in your home state. And then we want to be good in the footprint as well. We think that's really important. And then obviously be able to go nationally and being able to play a game like we did last year to end the season in the Rose Bowl and played pretty well. And obviously my background being a head coach in the SEC, we've been fortunate to do that. And as you know, it can be a little bit challenging here. This isn't the easiest place to get into, and it's not the easiest place to get out of, which I think is a strength for us, but also can be a weakness in some areas as well. But I think we've just done a really good job of working at it and being able to kind of lean on those relationships that we've developed throughout our career all over the countries. And that's not just me, that's the entire staff. And then I think at the end of the day, as you know, Coach, it's all about development. Whether it's a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star. I saw the guy last night that returned the punt for a touchdown in the Jets game. He was a 2-star guy who went undrafted. So the most important thing is once you get them on campus, you got to develop them. And you don't really care what their backgrounds are or where they're from. They all got to get better. And whether that's the weight room, which we take a lot of pride in, whether that's coaching them hard on the practice field, whether that's teaching them situational football, all these things I think are critical for us to go where we want to go.
Yeah, one last one here for me. Defensively, when you hired Manny Diaz as your defensive coordinator, man, hat off to you. I mean, that sends a message. There's a lot of Manny being an ex-head coach, and you saying, hey, I want to get the best guy, that I can to help our football team. Bringing Manny in as an ex-head coach and him being a defensive coordinator, how has all that worked? It's obvious you're getting great results, so I'm sure it's working good. But like I say, hats off to you, because not a lot of head coaches would be comfortable doing that.
Well, as you know, Coach, leadership 101 is you surround yourself with as many good people as you possibly can. One of the things I think that helped with Manny is my first defensive coordinator, which Bob Shoop. Him and Bob used to spend time talking every offseason, so there was some understanding of what we did and how we did it. The other thing is somewhat similar packages in terms of a 4-down front. I think it's really hard to go in a completely different direction and change your whole philosophy. It's a little bit easier now with the transfer portal, but it still can be challenging. So I wanted to go hire somebody that understood what we do, how we do it, based out of a 4-down front, be aggressive. We're playing more man coverage now. And the timing worked out really well. A lot of times when that happens, you don't know if people are going to be receptive right away. And I literally called him like the next day. And it went fast. He was interested. We were interested in him. We kind of hit it off right away, had some philosophical discussions, and it moved fast. And it's been a blessing. He's been awesome. He's been awesome in front of our players. He's been great with our staff. He'll pop into my office every once in a while and we'll discuss something. I'll go into his office and we'll discuss something. So having these guys with head coaching experience on your staff, there's a ton of value in it, and especially the way we operate. He's the head coach of our defense, just like Coach Yursich is the head coach of our offense.
Penn State head coach James Franklin. Coach, appreciate your time. Thanks a lot for joining us. Best of luck this weekend.
Thanks, Dave.
So that is James Franklin. Good to have him with us here today. Penn State cruising along, I think fair to say. The same could not be said of Illinois. I'm kind of surprised, I got to tell you, of what we've seen from the Illini. Have struggled on both lines of scrimmage. They were very fortunate to win their opener against Toledo. They got dominated early on by Kansas. To their credit, they battled back in their game, but this was not a game that was particularly in doubt, really, for much of the night. What do you make of what we've seen from the Illini, particularly after they played so well a season ago? Yeah,
to me, they're not. They graduated the secondary guys, so they're obviously giving up, plays in the back end. That's the big plays can kill you. That's a little bit of a concern. The second thing is just shooting themselves in the foot, not giving themselves the best chance, getting behind the sticks because maybe of a penalty, maybe of a turnover. Defensively, I don't think it's all come together. Last year, it's tough. When you're number one scoring defense in the country, people are patting you on the back a lot. Everybody's feeling good. They think it's going to happen automatically. You got change with the defensive coordinator. Obviously, we just talked about Ryan going to Purdue, so you got a little bit of a change over there. And the quarterback thing, Tommy DeVito, my guy, from last year. He threw 4 interceptions all year. Right. They've already thrown 3. I mean, that kind of sums it up right there when you talk about turnovers being so critical, winning and losing football games. Yeah, no doubt. And look, they would not have won the opener if it weren't for Luke Altmaier. I mean, he was fabulous. He stood in the pocket on the biggest play of the game and delivered an incredible ball that, again, a 4th down conversion that won them the game. He's been their leading rusher each of the first 2 games. That's not, you can't have that. Right. That's not going to fly when you get down the road. I guess I say that all to say, I think he's been pretty good. But your point of the turnover, no, I agree. Your point of the turnovers. But to me, it just feels like it's defense. And you mentioned the change of defensive coordinator. Aaron Henry was on the staff last year. Right. Brett Bielema is a defensive guy. So the sense is that there's continuity here, even though you lost Ryan Walters. But how challenging is that adjustment? Even if you don't kind of say, hey, we're changing the scheme, we're doing something different, if you have a different voice at the front of that room, because there's been a definite drop-off there. Yeah, it is, and everybody kind of wants to be their own guy, and players win games, not coaches, and they lost some very good players, some great players, in my opinion, on defense, particularly on that back end. So, they're going through the whole process of getting new guys ready to play. The system is the same, but there's still maybe a different voice on how you go about making those corrections and how you're installing game plans. So the scheme isn't changing, but it is different when someone else is standing in front of the room. They played 2 really good teams, too. Like Toledo may very well win the MAC. They won it a year ago. Kansas was incredibly impressive. They are a dynamic offensive team. But you look now, defensively, they've given up 16 runs of 10 yards or longer. Yeah. That is the most in a power conference. And would they give up 4 passes over 20 yards, against Kansas? And they fell behind the sticks so bad in the beginning. I mean, at halftime. So at least they came back and they did battle the second half. They didn't give up. That thing could have been 40-something to 10.
Yeah.
And they did stop the bleeding, and as we say, and they got out there and they made an effort and they fought till the end. But they just, between turnovers, big plays, run and pass, that'll do it to you.
Huge game for them. This would be a massive shot in the arm.
And Penn State's a lot better team than Kansas.
Indisputably. Yeah. As good as Kansas is, I think Kansas is good, but Penn State's on a different level, right?
Absolutely.
You're talking about the 7th-ranked team in the country. Would be a huge shot in the arm for them if they could figure out a way to pull this game off. But if not, you got FAU coming in next week. Maybe you right the ship a little bit. But this is not where Illinois.
Don't turn the ball over. You got to protect that ball to have any chance against Penn State.
Not where they expected to be. I think it's fair to say. Coach, how does that compare with your experiences as a captain? You were a captain of the Pitt team in 1973, and your experiences with captains as a coach.
Yeah, I would say, I remember when Emmitt Smith became captain of the Dallas Cowboys when I was there, and they asked him what he thought of this, and he made a comment, and it's always stuck with me. I've used it. He said, being a captain, he said, winning and doing it right is not a sometime thing. And really, it's really going back to what Urban said. I mean, you want a captain who, because a lot of guys can disguise it and kind of be killing themselves on the football field for the effort and rah and let's go, and then they never go to class and they're out at the bars at night. So they're not living their lives. Just like Urban said, in all areas that you want these other players. You don't want to be a hypocrite. He's the captain, but yet, coach, he never goes to class. Or, coach, he's captain, but he's out 4 nights a week. It's no. That's not who you want leading this team. So I always looked for the guy that I thought was solid, just like, hey, the winner, all the time, on the field, off the field. And the one thing that I probably did a little different, and we started at the University of Miami, is we rotated captains every week. And it was a little bit just to kind of make sure we were protecting ourselves. It was a motivator so that, hey, everybody if you were playing well and you were doing things the right way, offense, defense, and special teams. So all 3 phases were included in this. And then at the end, sometimes we would elect a captain. Johnny Majors, in my case, he elected it right after training camp, early, picked the captains, kind of like Ohio State does now. So, I did like picking them every week because it gave a lot of guys, it's tough. I mean, there's some guys that will get picked by your teammates and you're thinking as a coach, God, I wanted him to be the captain.
Right, which is what Urban was discussing, right?
And so by alternating it, I always thought I could give everybody an opportunity and then let's see how it unfolds. Sometimes I went the whole year like that. Sometimes with 3 or 4 games ago, I'd say, okay, hey, now it's the last month of the season. These are our permanent captains.
I think it's really interesting, too, because the test of leadership is, of course, when you face adversity, right? It's not when things are going well. And you can look at some teams, we were talking about Purdue and the nice bounce back. Like, how about Indiana, right? You had a really tough opener. You have to play a team in Ohio State that no one would want to open with. You're really limited offensively in that game, and yet they bounced back in a big way against Indiana State this week.
Absolutely, they did. I mean, 23 transfers, right? I mean, they had the most transfers by 6 or 8 more than anybody else in the Big Ten. And Tom Allen, with his energy, that team bought in. He got these players to buy in. I think after last week's game, he made some decisions. We know who the quarterback I think Jackson's going to be the quarterback now, right? Yes. Devon Jackson going forward. The guy had completed 80% of his passes. So I think the quarterback thing back and forth. Who is it? I think they've decided on that. And last week, hey, they played 2 running backs and they got the running game going. Whenever Indiana can run the football, that makes all the difference. The best teams they had, when you look back with Tom Allen and early when he took over there, they were able to run the football. I mean, that complements what he wants to do on defense more than anything else. It's not throwing it 40 or 50 times a game.
558 yards in that game, their most since 2016. How about the leadership of a coach in the league, David Braun? He was put into a borderline impossible situation. Northwestern really didn't play well in the opener against Rutgers. Give Rutgers credit, but Northwestern aided and abetted. They were not good. And they turned it around. And that second half against UTEP was as complete a half as we have seen from Northwestern in years.
31-0 in the second half. I mean, that's about as good as you can do. You know, there's another expression. I'm pulling all these things out as you're throwing them out. You know, a coach can lose the game, but you can never lose the locker room. You know, and David Brum has not lost the locker room. You know, with everything going on, all the outside noise, I mean, these guys are playing hard for him. I said that after week one. They lined up and that defense played their tails off against Rutgers. I mean, and now it's showing up and maybe they've made a decision. You know, Bryant had a nice day, 11 of 17 and a touchdown. So that was solid quarterback play. They were balanced. They played good defense again, and they ran the ball for 185 yards. If you can do that, I mean, half of that, you're going to have a chance every week.
Yeah, 38 points, big deal for them when you consider that's more than they'd scored in the previous 5 games combined.
Yep.
By a significant margin.
This will be a good one. At Duke, right? Down at Duke this week. Duke is better than they've been.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Northwestern's going to go in here with some confidence and looking forward to playing this game.
Now, this is a really good Duke team. We saw that against Clemson, a team that's ranked in the top 20 and deservedly so. Suspended Michigan State football coach Mel Tucker released a lengthy statement yesterday defending himself against the sexual harassment allegations of sexual violence prevention advocate Brenda Tracy, saying, among other things, that he and Tracy had an intimate adult relationship and that Tracy had initiated their conversation on the night in question. Tucker also called into question the fairness of Michigan State's hearing process. USA Today, which broke the story, reported that Tucker's statement contradicted prior statements that he had made to the university's independent investigator. The hearing is scheduled for early October, and Tracy responded to Tucker on social media saying that she will be available for cross-examination. With Tucker suspended, secondary coach Harlon Barnett is the acting head coach at Michigan State. Barnett was an All-American at MSU under George Perlis. He's in his 15th season on MSU's defensive staff, working for both Tucker and Mark D'Antonio, who is now serving as the school's associate head coach. Barnett addressing the media today for the first time in his new role.
We had a team meeting on Sunday where I met with them, and I told those guys that, hey, man, we got to all come together in this time of adversity, and we have to be unified through the adversity so that we can, and then we need all our leaders to lead, not only the coaches, but the leaders to lead. And I told them they lead by love, encouragement, accountability, and discipline. So we have to lead. We all have to lead. This is a determined group. They worked very hard this offseason. They've worked very hard so far this season. Hey, we're 2-0, right? And they're still motivated and excited to move forward in this season. We have a mission to complete, so we're mission focused.
A lot of stuff in that news conference, among other things, Barnett saying that he has not spoken to Mel Tucker since Sunday. What's the road that he has to navigate here? What are the challenges that he's dealing with a football team that, as he said, is off to a good start?
Well, I think the one positive thing that from the get-go, he's been there, 15 years. So he was George Perlis, Mark D'Antonio. Mark now is going to be there as an associate to help him out. No one has more rings in their drawer. No one has more great Michigan State stories, good, bad, indifferent, than what Harlan does. So I think he'll be able to stand up in front of that room and say, hey, let me tell you guys something. You know, I mean, this is how we've done it, and this team compares to this team. So he'll be able to give these players a lot of analogies that are motivational to get them ready to play and to go out there and compete to win a championship. I think they've made a decision last week on their quarterback. It looks like it's probably going to be Noah Kim. You know, Noah Kim was actually there when D'Antonio was there, so there's a little bit of a bridge there, I think, which would make the transition a little bit easier. And the defense is playing hard, and Harlan right now is part of that defense, an integral part of that defense. So that should continue forward.
Has second in the Big Ten in total defense, and we know what an Achilles heel defense has been these last couple of years. They'll get a real challenge here against Washington. I mean, this is not a game that you ease into. as the acting head coach here for Harlon Barnett, and his secondary will be tested. Michael Penix, as we know, a fabulous quarterback.
Yeah, I think you'd almost rather play anybody in the Big Ten than have to go across the country and play a team that you're really not.
Well, it's home game. Home game.
Oh, it's
yeah,
home
game.
Yep. Oh, that'll help then. That'll help.
Yeah.
That'll help a little bit.
But even still.
Absolutely. You know what? Those kids will come out. You watch how hard they play. This will be a closer game, better game. Michigan State will have a good chance to win this game. I believe that.
We shall see. Again, lost to Washington on the road last year. Penix has just been phenomenal, about 430 passing yards per game. Again, a story we'll cover a lot more as the week goes on. Speaking of heading towards the weekend, Saturday, be sure to kick off the day with Big Ten Tailgate live at Wisconsin. Then 5 games coming your way as part of a triple header of action. The final drive wrapping everything up with highlights and analysis. It's Saturday only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. I want to talk to you about one other team featured among those 5 games. Rutgers off to a really good start. We talked about them against Northwestern. They were dominant in the fourth quarter against Temple last week. We were talking about Northwestern playing a great half of football. That last quarter of football for Rutgers is about as well as we've seen them play in a long time against an FBS opponent. Now you get Virginia Tech, who's a little bit down after losing to Purdue, a chance to see some more momentum. What have you seen from Rutgers?
Yeah, well, if anybody's interested in the Greg Schiano's blueprint, this is it.
This is it.
Okay, number 1, 250 yards rushing. Number 2, hold the ball for 10 minutes longer than the opponent. 35 minutes possession time. Number 3, defense. Shut them out, at the end. Greg's big into conditioning. You can see that his team is going to play you to the final snap of the game. And lastly, protect the quarterback somewhat. And how do you protect the quarterback? He's doing it. They're playing great defense, special teams, and holding the football.
Well, they really are playing great defense. They've given up 14 points through 2 games, the fewest they've given up in the first 2 games of the season since 2006. We started this last week. It's going to be a weekly tradition for us. Wani's winner of the week. Where are you going?
I'm going where I've invested a lot of money in tuition, okay? Tom Allen, Indiana. And I'll tell you what, Tom Allen is under a lot of pressure, as much pressure as any coach in the Big Ten to win, right? He's under the pressure. He 20 more transfers than anybody else, 23 transfers. 10 out of defense, okay, that are gone. He had to start over right there. And he is getting a great effort out of these guys, and they're executing well. So they can look at that Ohio State game, and there was a lot of good that they could pull out of that opener, even though they lost. And then they have a game like this against Indiana State. They get my award this week.
I'm really impressed with how much better their defense is when you consider the personnel losses from last year. You lose 9 of your top 10 tacklers.
Absolutely.
And to be where they are, it's pretty astounding. They've done a very nice job on that side of the ball.
Give them a sticker.
Yes, the Wani's winner sticker. We will see you tomorrow. Anthony Hare and Pat Forty join me. See you then on Wednesday.